This episode of Military Matters is brought to you by Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes provides independent news and information to the U.S. military community, including active duty service members, DoD civilians, veterans, contractors, and their families. Unique among Department of Defense authorized news outlets, Stars and Stripes is governed by the principles of the First Amendment. No slants, no agendas, just the news. Go to stripes.com and see the difference for yourself. That's stripes.com. Use promo code PODCAST. Get 50% off your digital subscription. Use promo code PODCAST. Get 50% off your digital subscription. Go to stripes.com now. This episode is also brought to you by International Auto Logistics. Go to PCSMyPOV.com to get all of the information you'll need on storing and picking up your vehicle. Or check out the just launched IAL mobile app. Just search for PCSMyPOV in the Apple Store or on Google Play. As of this recording, there have been over 1 million documented cases of COVID-19. Over 52,000 dead worldwide, almost 6,000 dead in the U.S. alone.
This pandemic isn't just costing lives. It's also taking a terrible toll on the economy. Over 6 million Americans filed for unemployment, with projections that the unemployment rate could reach 30%.
Service members are not immune to the financial crisis this pandemic has created. A recent stop movement order has affected every branch of the military. Reserve units are not conducting training. Military school dates have been suspended. At home, service members are faced with the challenge of making a dual-income household function with just one income. And with all of that, life's challenges such as vehicles breaking down and unexpected costs, well, family emergencies continue to happen.
There are over 1.3 million military service members across every branch. Everyone is being affected, but every one of them has a place to go for help. We talked with the service relief organizations for the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard to find out how their organizations are standing by to assist service members affected by COVID-19.
And Connecting Vets reporter Abbie Bennett takes us into the CARES Act and how that $2.2 trillion will affect the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
And I'm Desmon Farris. This is Military Matters. Every branch has a relief organization that's designed to provide economic relief when times are hard. Also, each organization works together to ensure their respective members have a place to go when money is tight. They also work closely with the American Red Cross to make sure that no matter where disaster strikes in a service member's life, that their relief organization will be there to pick them up.
The pandemic has provided us with a platform that is both enormously large and completely different than anything that we've ever seen before.
That's retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General John Hooper.
I was very lucky to be selected as the CEO for the Air Force Aid Society, which is what I've done now for almost 15 years.
That's right. We started with the Air Force. With bases across the globe and a force that's always on the move, we wanted to know how COVID-19 was impacting the Air Force Aid Society.
The pandemic is, of course, worldwide. The United States Air Force operates worldwide. So our response, our demand has to be focused to get to airmen wherever they are in the world. What we provide for airmen is 3 levels of support. We provide for emergency assistance. That is, when they're in financial distress, they can come to the Air Force Aid Society. We will put on the fix that stops the bleeding. We don't provide a continuous stream of income, but our objective is to get them out of the situation and give them a chance to catch their breath and to rearrange themselves to go forward. We also provide education support. That education support amounts to about $6 million or so a year. It's based upon education grants, financial grants that are need-based, and then we also give some scholarships. The final thing that we do is what we call community support. So these programs focus on helping the family get through those times of separation and, frankly, those times of getting reacquainted with each other. So there are programs like car care, where an airman that's about to be deployed can get his family car inspected and the oil change so that they don't leave the family with a car that's about ready and in need of service. In addition to that, there are numerous childcare programs that we supplement. to help airmen when they're moving. They can get childcare before they move, to get the kids perhaps out of the way a little bit while mom and dad are packing up things to go. And at least as importantly, get them perhaps out of the way when mom and dad are receiving all of their goods and setting up a new house. Those are just some samples of the things that we provide for airmen.
With social distancing and office closures, every relief organization is trying to connect with their service member to ensure they get the relief that they need.
Every Airmen and Family Readiness Center is impacted, whether great or small, by the imperative of social distancing, or perhaps they're even closed. So our ability to get to the point of sale has been absolutely challenged. Fortunately, there are reciprocal agreements amongst the service relief societies and the American Red Cross. So an airman can go to any Army post, can go to a naval station to get support from Army Emergency Relief, Navy Marine Corps Relief, and then, of course, we will compensate Army and Navy for the support that they provide our airmen. And we would do likewise, of course, for them.
In addition to the reciprocal agreement between all of the relief organizations and trying to keep the doors open, organizations such as the Army Emergency Relief are finding new ways to reach out to their service members.
First thing is to follow the, social distancing guidance as well as whatever the governor's put out.
That's retired Army Lieutenant General Raymond Mason. He's the director of the Army Emergency Relief.
The governor of Maryland and Virginia just yesterday published some additional guidance about remain at home and things like that. So on 16 March, we began remote operations teleworking here at AER headquarters. A few of us are coming in for mission essential kind of things, but we're following all the social distancing things. And we're actually being able to do that even better, and less people will come in to the office at AER headquarters. In the field at the 70 plus locations, we knew some of those would begin to also have to close operations based on the each installation commander's guidance on either shelter in place or reduce social interaction. And so we put in place the capability to do all of our support electronically, digitally. So on our website, you can go there and it has 6 different conditions that you might be facing. And then it allows you to go in and process a request online. And then we will pay them. It'll work back through the queue, back through the AERO. And then we'll pay them through a electronic, basically, transfer of funds from our account directly to their bank account. And we're already doing that. So the physical coming into an office has been dramatically diminished. There are still some locations around the Army that still have their doors open. We'll see how that transitions. In fact, most of them, we were able to declare the AEROs as mission essential, which allows them to be in the office. But again, we're letting each installation commander obviously execute on their installation what's best for them, because we don't really have that view. But we've got the capability to completely operate remotely online, and that's happening.
Every organization provides very similar services. All of them put their service members' needs first.
Every year we do about 70 million in assistance. Usually about 50 million of that is no interest loans, 0 interest. Where else in the world can you get a 0 interest loan? Not a lot of places, maybe mom and dad. Or it could be a grant. Usually that averages between $8 to $10 million of everything we do is a grant, which a soldier does not have to pay back. And then thirdly, we also do educational scholarships for spouses and children. Usually ends up being, again, between $8 to $10 million for undergraduate scholarships for both, as I said, spouses and children. Those are the 3 major products we do. This is not a giveaway program. This is a help up. Every dollar we loan or grant or scholarship is a soldier's dollar. That's how we look at it. We're not going to give you a monthly check. We're going to help you get through a challenge you've got. We also have the ability through the ACS to provide financial counseling. And many soldiers do need a little bit of help with the skills of financial management. Not something you usually learn at school. And if you didn't learn it at home, you're facing these brand new things. First time you're buying a car, first time you're renting an apartment, first time you got a bank account, first time you got credit cards, in many cases for these soldiers. Need some help to do that.
The COVID-19 pandemic is presenting unique challenges to all the branch relief organizations, but the consensus between them is that their job has only just started. We wanted to know if they'd seen a sharp increase for services since the pandemic started.
I wouldn't say it's a sharp increase.
That's Julian Gonzalez. She's the Vice President, Chief Communications and Development Officer for the Navy and Marine Corps Relief Society.
I mean, obviously, we are tracking how many are coming in through virus-related requests versus day-to-day. I think as people are hunkered down, we're not necessarily seeing the need. As people, we're just starting to get into that phase now where, second incomes are going away and, somebody's going to have to provide childcare because they might not qualify for childcare now. So those pieces are where we're starting to see more impact. I think once everybody gets freedom of movement again, that's when we're really expecting to have a big wave.
Lieutenant General Mason from Army Emergency Relief.
You're exactly right. We've done some of the analysis in previous kinds of crises, like in a hurricane. Initially, we don't see a lot. It's when everybody kind of gets out of their house, starts looking around, seeing what's happening, what's the damage, what's our finances. Everybody's kind of hunkering down, looking at the 5-meter target. As people come to the other side of this, whether that's whether the coronavirus, is on the diminishing, but whatever mentally they come to the other side of this, yes, we see a spike. And luckily we've got the funds to do that. And if we do have some cash flow challenges, that's where we would pull the trigger on potentially a loan, either through the government program that they put in place that the president signed, or a loan for up to $20 million from our line of credit. And we've got a third line of credit we could go to. So yeah, those are all backup plans. Right now, people are kind of focused on other things, just their loved ones and their tight circle. And once this thing begins, they start to look around and say, okay, what other challenge do we have? What other bills are we facing? What other, things are happening? One of the common things we think is going to happen is while the soldier's getting paid, many cases, if they had both husband and wife were both working, and if the spouse now isn't getting paid and they had, they were counting on that for their monthly budget, now oops, half our budget, half our income's gone. We've got to, number one, try to readjust our spending habits, but there could be that interim time before they adjust. Oh my golly, we can't make some of the bills that we put in place. I think that's going to be probably fairly common. That second income is now gone, and what's the impact on the family?
Julian Gonzalez with Navy Marine Corps Relief Society.
As the bases go into different levels of, 2 weeks ago, I think we all knew about DEFCON levels. I don't think any of us knew that there were health levels that went in partnership with that. I was out in California and they were like, we're in Bravo. I'm like, didn't even know that existed. And they were just starting to talk about social distancing and don't shake hands and, rub elbows and all those things that we do instead. It's been interesting for us to see what sort of cases are coming through. Obviously, there was a wide net cast over people that had PCS orders that suddenly got canceled, but they'd already made plans. Their household goods were already on their way to their new location. They'd already bought a house at their new location. And suddenly, they're recalled back to the other side of the states. They don't, they've moved out of their apartment. So they're looking at having to put down deposits and figure out day-to-day living without their household goods.
The stop movement order has been a huge disruption in many service members' lives. PCSs have stopped, people have been recalled to previous duty stations, and everyone is feeling the pressure of being in limbo.
But there's one branch that is intimately familiar with operating in a crisis when that crisis is right in their backyard.
Well, I'm Elena Howard. I'm the Chief Development Officer for Coast Guard Mutual Assistance.
In previous episodes, we've neglected to include the Coast Guard in our military branch discussion, so I'm going to take a beating over this one, but for the longest time, I wasn't sure if the Coast Guard was a branch of the military.
First thing to set the record straight, the Coast Guard is for sure a military branch. We do fall under Homeland Security, so that does make us a little bit different in the fact that we're not under DoD. And Coast Guard Mutual Assistance, so we are the official aid society for the Coast Guard. So some good examples for the Coast Guard specifically, a lot of times when we come in to help, Coast Guard's big search and rescue, we're stationed wherever there's a coast. And so lots of times that's in a hurricane zone. So we'll have Coast Guard families that, the member is out doing search and rescue, taking care of people during a hurricane, and their family's at home in that same hurricane zone. So being able to go and make sure that, if their home has been destroyed by a hurricane, we can come in and help financially to make sure that they're not at a loss for serving their country. So really you can think about us as stepping in to fill the gap. Wherever there's a financial need, we fill the gap for our Coast Guard families.
We could fill about 5 hours of content telling you about all of the different programs and services offered by the Army Emergency Relief, Air Force Aid Society,
Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and the Coast Guard Mutual Assistance.
But what we wanted to do here was introduce you to the different organizations and remind you that they are there for you.
Service members are a proud bunch, and asking for help can sometimes be hard to do. Every one of these organizations wants to help. No judgment, just assistance. In light of COVID-19, a lot of programs, grants, and loans have foregone the usual mandatory financial class, and they're just offering aid.
Okay, Rod, but what if I'm a full bird colonel? Can I get help too?
Whether you're a lieutenant platoon leader or the captain of a ship, these organizations are there to provide interest-free loans, grants, and other types of assistance during your time of need. And if that time is now, go get help. Retirees can even go see them. And if you're not sure they can help you, go see them anyway. They might know the right organization for you to go to.
That's right. Remember, even if you're on post, a base, a naval station, and you're the only service member of your branch there, whatever relief organization is nearby will help you. You don't need to be an airman to see the Army Emergency Relief.
You can find all these organizations with a simple Google search, your branch of service, and the word relief.
Yep, Army Relief, Air Force Relief, Navy Relief, and so on and so on.
We've talked about how service members can find help during their time of need. Now we shift our attention to veterans, many of which are not retirees and may not qualify for assistance from military relief organizations.
Those veterans will need to find resources most likely through the VA. After the break, we'll talk with Connecting Vets reporter Abbie Bennett, who tells us what the VA is doing with their part of the $2.2 trillion, yes, trillion, from the recently passed CARES.
That's after the break.
This episode of Military Matters is brought to you by Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes provides independent news and information to the U.S. military community, including active duty service members, DoD civilians, veterans, contractors, and their families. Unique among Department of Defense authorized news outlets, Stars and Stripes is governed by the principles of the First Amendment. No slants, no agendas, just the news.
Use promo code podcast and save 50% on your digital subscription.
Go to stripes.com and see the difference for yourself. That's stripes.com.
When your orders come in and it's time to make a plan to move or store your personally owned vehicle, International Auto Logistics is here as the #1 resource for U.S. service members' POV needs. Just use their website to get started at www.pcsmypov.com to get all of the information you'll need on storing and picking up your vehicle. Or check out the just launched IAL mobile app. Just search for PCS My POV in the Apple Store or on Google Play.
The Department of Veterans Affairs is playing a crucial role in the fight against COVID-19. What a lot of people don't know is their mission is bigger than taking care of veterans. In fact, they have several missions outside of veterans.
So the Department of Veterans Affairs has a really big role in national coronavirus response. And a lot of people don't fully know. People think about the VA as the place where veterans go to get their health care. That is VA's major first mission, but VA actually has 3 core missions. The first is to care for veterans and their families. The second and third are to provide training for doctors, not just VA doctors, but doctors all across the country. The third is for research, to conduct medical research. VA actually does a lot of research that really benefits the medical community. and the general population. But the fourth mission, which started in the 1980s, is for VA to serve as a backup or sort of a last line of defense for the American healthcare system in crises. So when a natural disaster happens in the United States and a local healthcare system is really overwhelmed, if a hurricane happens and a community needs help, they need medical assistance, they need supplies, they need staff, VA will actually deploy staff and supplies and services to those areas. It also happened during some mass shooting events like the Pulse nightclub in Florida. And so VA has already done this a few times for sort of smaller scale events. But VA has never, at least in my understanding, responded to an event quite like this. But that is what VA is set up to do. That is part of its fourth mission, is to respond to major national health crises. And so the reason for that is because VA is the largest healthcare provider in the country. It has hundreds of medical centers, thousands of clinics around the country. And so there's no other single healthcare system that really has the scope of VA, but also that has the federal authority behind it. So even in the event of a government shutdown, VA still has all of its funding, it still has all of its staff, and it has these additional powers to be able to respond. So right now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, VA has just initiated its fourth mission. It has opened up a few of its hospitals in New York City to accept some non-veteran patients. These are actually some non-COVID-19 patients, but it's basically to take the burden off of some of the hospitals in New York so that they can fully focus on treating civilians dealing with the coronavirus. And VA is also deploying additional resources to some parts of California, to New Orleans, which is particularly hard hit, and also to New York to help out.
So with all of those missions on the VA's plate, how can we be sure that taking care of veterans isn't going to fall to the wayside? They're already swamped as it is.
So that's absolutely true. And I will say that part of VA, it's very clear in VA's core missions that its mission to serve veterans comes first. So any kind of response that it provides or any kind of additional resources it provides to non-veterans, to civilians, is not supposed to in any way infringe on veterans getting the care they need. And VA has been very careful, even so far, in making sure that they're saying that. Anytime they've deployed any resources to non-veterans, they've made sure that they've communicated that, hey, we sat down and we thought about this. We wanted to make sure it wouldn't affect our current patients, but after we decided that it wouldn't, we deployed those resources. But the reason VA is part of this national response, and actually VA is part of a task force, not just for coronavirus, but for any national healthcare emergencies, along with the Department of Health and Human Services and FEMA and other federal organizations like that, is really because of the scope of VA, because VA has so many hospitals and clinics. And actually, what a lot of people don't know, but what former VA Secretary Dr. David Shulkin was telling me, is that VA hospitals are actually very, very large. Many of them were built years and years ago when hospitals were built to have open wards, which means VA hospitals and medical centers are capable of handling far, far, far more patients than they do typically. So in an absolute emergency situation, VA is able to handle a lot more patients than they normally do day to day. That entire capability of the VA system to house that many patients, to care for that many patients, is a big part of why VA is playing this kind of role in emergencies. But also, VA has a system of employees to bring up for emergencies. These are on a volunteer basis, employees who are, they're fully paid, but they volunteer to do emergency response. And VA also is in charge of special caches of emergency supplies, specifically for disasters, emergencies, or even, a terrorist attack. And those supplies include medicine and other medical equipment, specifically to respond to things like this. The federal government has and funds this huge healthcare system. And yes, it is typically and almost exclusively for veterans, but in moments of crisis, the federal government is able to call on that agency and ask them if they have the capability to help.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic hit its stride, there were budget caps being discussed, and the VA was at the center of many of those discussions. The VA wanted way more than their cap allowed. But then an interesting question came up about the coronavirus.
Lawmakers said, hey, unless we renegotiate the budget caps with the president, we're not able to meet this ask. Well, during the same time, lawmakers also asked VA, hey, this coronavirus thing looks really bad. Do you guys think that you'll need more money? And at the time, Secretary Robert Wilkie told lawmakers, from what we understand of the situation right now, and this was back in February, we don't think we need any additional resources. Well, about a month later, Congress and the president signed off on almost 20 billion more for VA, and that money is earmarked just for coronavirus response. Almost $20 billion. And that's the entire coronavirus spending package for VA. And that was wrapped into that really big nationwide coronavirus spending package that included the $1,200 checks for Americans.
Abbie's referring to the $2.2 trillion CARES Act that was recently passed.
And that was a trillions of dollars worth of a entire spending package, but VA's part of that is $20 billion. And that money is earmarked specifically for VA's coronavirus response. And it includes things like, paying for additional healthcare support, paying for supplies, including testing, paying for staff overtime, paying to make improvements to medical facilities so that they can continue to house more and more patients, really just trying to make sure VA has all the money it needs, planning for a worst case scenario.
The VA is getting almost $20 billion. Yes, billion.
Part of that $20 billion is $12.5 million that is going specifically to support the VA Office of the Inspector General to oversee VA's virus response. So lawmakers did include $12.5 million specifically to the Inspector General's office as part of that $20 billion to make sure that that office has the resources it needs to continue to oversee VA as it responds to this virus. And yes, that does include how it is spending that money.
$20 billion is a lot of money. How is that money going to be used specifically by the VA?
Lawmakers have specifically earmarked parts of that $20 billion that have to go to certain things. So for instance, the biggest chunk, $14.4 billion, is supposed to go specifically to healthcare services at VA facilities, telehealth, and that means purchasing more equipment, supplies, testing kits, personal protective equipment that we keep hearing about. So that's masks and things like that. And that money is also supposed to go to support for homeless veterans or veterans at risk of being homeless, nursing homes, and community living centers where some of our most vulnerable veterans are located right now. And so that money is supposed to go to healthcare specifically. $2.1 billion, the next biggest chunk of this money, is supposed to go to an increased demand we're seeing in care through the Mission Act. So the Mission Act was put in place to allow veterans more options to see non-VA doctors in their communities. And these are doctors who are partnered with VA. And so since we're seeing an increase of that as people are sticking closer to home and they want to go to a doctor that is close to them rather maybe than going to a big VA medical center, VA has to pay for that. And so $2.1 billion is going to go to pay for that care. Total, that's about $16.5 billion that's going to go to different types of healthcare. $100 million of that $20 billion is going to go to fund VA's 24-hour emergency management. And so that's staff overtime, travel, transportation, supplies, training, everything that VA's emergency management needs to keep running. $606 million of that money is going to go specifically to medical facilities. This includes developing potential alternative sites for care. So yeah, that could be potential new hospitals or temporary hospitals, mobile treatment centers. So VA and some other medical systems have these, they kind of look like enormous buses, but they're very, very different inside. It's basically a mobile hospital or clinic, and they're able to deploy those all across the country. It's also going to go to maintenance projects and infrastructure or utility issues at VA hospitals. So if things, maybe were planned to be fixed in the future, but need to be fixed now in case that hospital has a surge of patients, here's that money to get that done right away. Another $2.25 billion is going to go to VA IT systems. Now, this seems non-coronavirus related, but it's really, really important because VA right now is asking anybody who's not incredibly ill or has emergency needs to stay home and get their healthcare through telehealth. So video chats, phone calls, those types of things with your doctor. A lot of healthcare systems are doing this right now, and that's to prevent spread of infection and also to keep people out of the hospitals that will be needed for virus patients or for people with emergency medical needs. And it's also going to go to help with IT issues for VA employees who are working from home. VA has a terrible track record with IT systems. It's still using IT systems actually from the 70s that have sort of been band-aided together. And so this $2.25 billion is going to go to try and shore that up, at least for the time being. So VA employees can keep working. VA patients, veterans can still get their care online, and that can keep moving forward. And then we've got some additional money that's going to go to the Veterans Benefits Administration to help them keep the lights on. $6 million is going to go to maintain VA's crisis response and continuity operation plan. That's going to include stuff like cleaning, sanitation services at its incredibly high trafficked hospitals. And then we've got $150 million that's going to go to construction at existing VA hospitals and nursing homes. So that, again, goes to maybe facilities need to be expanded or retrofitted to handle all of the patients that they're going to be dealing with. And then, like I said, that $12.5 million is going to support the Office of the Inspector General to oversee how all that money is spent, but also how VA is handling this response.
$2 trillion in stimulus for the economy and funds to fight COVID-19. That's a huge number and a huge undertaking. Have we ever done anything like this before outside of wartime?
We are really in uncharted territory. But I think that's something that we're going to see moving forward is how these bills are applied. Things seem great on paper, but how they're actually applied in the real world and during a crisis like this is very different. So I think what we will want to watch out for is how this is all implemented. I think that's where we could see things maybe not following the letter of the law in these stimulus packages, or maybe not following, we call it the spirit of the law. So sometimes when Congress passes laws, they're not always, down to the minutia specific. And so there's room for interpretation sometimes, and that's where we can get a little sticky and tricky. But that's why it's important that we as journalists keep an eye on how these laws are being implemented and how this money is being spent, but also why it's important that watchdogs like the VA Inspector General is able to keep an eye on these things as well.
This stimulus bill has garnered a lot of criticism due to millions being provided to organizations such as PBS and the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. But the question is whether or not the funding should have been considered emergency funds and part of the act to begin with.
Like Abbie said, this act is huge. I have a copy of it on my desktop and I tried to read it. It's written for lawyers and Hill staff. Good luck getting through it. When it comes to politics, neither the right or the left was going to pass a bill everyone liked. Critics of the original bill saw it as a bailout heaven for corporate America. Politics and pandemics do not make good bedfellows.
At the end of the day, what matters is you and your family taking care of each other and riding out both the health crisis and the financial crisis. All of us are going to need some type of help at some point. And even after we can leave our homes, there will be pieces of our economy that we will need to pick up and fix.
This episode was written and produced by Rod Rodriguez and Desmon Farris, executive produced by Benjamin Bateman. To learn more about the service relief organizations, visit their websites available in our show notes. We want to thank Connecting Vets for once again lending us their brilliant reporter, Abbie Bennett, who covers the Hill. You can find her work at connectingvets.com. Links are in the show notes.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter at StripesMMPod. You can also follow me at DPodFarris.
And you can follow me at RodPodRod. Folks, stay safe.
Stay healthy.
And we'll see you at the next episode.